We've got tips and recipes for healthy living. So for fun and inspiration, come and join us in the raw food world.
Welcome everybody, this is Matt Monarch with the Raw Food World TV show, and today is November something.
Today, or is it tomorrow?
We'll say tomorrow, because it's, I got it.
Technically speaking.
November 7th. Okay. We're hanging out in Asheville, North Carolina still, and we've got Summer, who is a raw mama. And this is your third?
Yes, this is my third little miracle, mine and Jimmy's, and this is Darshan Makani Kolazar.
Aww. How old is he?
He is 5 weeks old today.
So beautiful. Now, earlier tonight you were discussing the difference between like having your first baby, and then you had your second one, and then your third one. And the first one you were just very cautious of everything, and then the second time like you were just like giving your baby away.
Yeah, you could just, have her, just take her, let me get some sleep.
And then the first time it was more of a fear factor of some sort?
It's just that you are so entirely focused on the life, this precious, precious life, and it hits home so clearly how precious it is. And you want to protect that life with every fiber of your being and every thought in your head. And whenever you're bringing life, whenever you're allowing life to come through you, giving birth to something, you can't do it without having one foot in between the worlds. You're in between the worlds. You have one foot in life and one foot in death, and it's coming through that place that life comes in. So there's always a bit of a risk factor, I guess, or there's always a bit of an awareness of the other side, and the crossing over and the fragility of the line between the two. And so that's really powerful. So when you have this new precious life, you're so intently focused on preserving its being, and then it's sort of like that layer peels away eventually, and you grow more and more comfortable with the safety of your child, and that its life is whole and intact, and slowly you stop being so neurotic.
Right on. Angela and I have learned a lot tonight from Summer. Wouldn't you say?
Definitely, yeah. I'm actually intending to steal Summer and bring her to Ecuador with us.
You
Yeah.
can't steal the willing, honey.
I mean, she's so fun, right, babe? I thought it'd be cool just to like bring her to the community we're gonna create.
Totally, yeah. We're hijacking her.
Yeah.
That's it. Can I fit in a piece of carry-on? I can munch on flax crackers in the bag with my baby on the way down to Ecuador. I love it. This little guy was talking just a little bit, weren't you? So, yes, it's different. I mean, every time you bring in a new life, it's different, because each life is different that you're bringing in. The children have different personalities, and that's reflected in the pregnancy and the way you feel during your pregnancy, and the energy that you have is partly the energy of the child that you're carrying. So, and then you find that the pregnancy that you have and the birth and the way that they are as babies is a lot of who they are as people. And so you experience that, it's a different being each time. And so there's no two pregnancies or journeys that are the same, although some of the milestones are all the same.
In your second pregnancy, you were talking about you were planning everything, like you envisioned it all.
My second pregnancy, I could have like written a thesis on it probably. I had a birth plan that was like 30 pages long. And I had a doula, and I had been gathering herbs for the whole pregnancy period and putting them in little bags and labels and jars and things. And I had 2 boxes full of herbs ready to take to the hospital with me to make. And I had a doula with instruction sheets, 4 or 5 pages long, on herbs to make for early labor, mid-labor, intense pushing the baby out labor, and immediately postpartum. I had everything down to a science, and just, totally bulletproof birth plan.
And did that happen up to that point?
It happened. Everything happened totally perfectly.
Exactly.
Yeah, everything, including an interesting thing with this herb called ground ivy. One of its other names is alehoof, or gill over the ground is kind of my favorite. Gill over the ground. It sounds very Renaissance-y, medieval. It's been used by the Appalachian midwives for centuries to expel the placenta after birth, or to expel the afterbirth, which sometimes it doesn't come out, and that's a problem, like it was in my first birth. And I almost died from blood loss. So I wanted to be prepared for that the second time, and I heard about this herb called ground ivy, and I tend to use herbs that I'm really familiar with, that have been around in my life, because those are the herbs that call to me, and those are like my herbal allies that have always been there. And this is one that's like grown in my yard ever since I was a little kid, and so I was really happy to learn that it had that medicinal value. And so I went and I gathered it right from the yard of the home where I grew up. I mean, the land there was so akin to me, and picked the plant in its prime and put it away. And then in the birth of my second child, when it was that time for the placenta to come out, and my midwife said, well, it's coming, but it's kind of a little sluggish. I looked at my doula and I'm like, make the tea. And she made the tea, and I drank it. And 1 minute later to the second, the placenta came out, and that was exactly what I had read it would do in the book, that 1 minute to the second later, the afterbirth comes out every time, like clockwork. And it was to the second. I was watching the clock because I had that in my head, that notion of, I'd heard that it happens like that. And it sure enough happened exactly like that, and the placenta came out. It was a picture-perfect, absolutely seamless, wonderful birth experience.
Whoa, you got to write a book about that. Like the herbs and everything, right?
Sure.
Okay, so now your first birth, you did the same thing. You planned everything out to the very last second.
The first birth, I didn't really know a whole lot of what I knew after that. I didn't know a lot about diet. I didn't know a lot about having a baby. And so I kind of bungled my way through a lot of stuff. I had envisioned it in my head, the birth process, from what little I knew of it. And I knew that you're in labor, and I knew that then there's a pushing phase, and that then your baby is born. And I had stopped there. When I sort of envisioned it in my head, that's sort of where the vision stopped. And then I'm like, okay, then you hold your baby, and you and your partner sit there, and you hold your baby, and you smile, and there's this like rosy glow around you, and you're in this little love nest with your baby after that. And so I hadn't counted on the afterbirth coming out. I hadn't even really thought of it.
Like the placenta.
So suddenly I was there, and the baby was born, and I'm like, wait, it's not over? I can't lay in my bed now with my baby in bliss land and be like that? And so no, it was interesting, and that's where everything kind of stalled out and went south, and I hadn't thought that part through at
So
all.
what happened at that point? You almost died, you said.
Yeah, because my uterus couldn't clamp down and stop the blood flow, because there was something in there. The placenta was keeping it from closing up.
Wow.
And the placenta was totally adhered to the uterine wall, and it wasn't coming out by itself. And we waited for about an hour at home, and I kept bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, and finally I lost my hearing. And I told my midwife, I can't hear. She goes, what, you can't hear what I'm saying? I'm like, no, I can't hear. So my husband picked me up and carried me to the car and went to the hospital. And I passed out, and I needed oxygen. I told them that I couldn't get out of the car without oxygen. And the late nurse reached. I arrive at the hospital, and I know for a fact I can't get out of the car without oxygen. And I tell the nurse that, and she reaches in, and it was really interesting. She reached in, and she just goes, we can handle it. So I'm like, okay, I had faith in that. I got out of the car, I passed out, I went in a wheelchair, I went to a parallel universe while they pushed me up into a room in the hospital. And I had an extremely mystical experience in the parallel universe. And then I woke up, and all the people around me were people that I had seen in this parallel universe. And they all, like, I knew them all. I knew them all. Like, I know my mother. It's like I felt like I knew everybody in the room.
Wow.
And I remembered them from this other world. And I remembered them from lifetimes. And I realized that all of those people had made a soul contract to be there for me at that time to save my life. Because literally, I mean, I could have died, and if it weren't for modern medicine, I very well would have died. I may have, modern medicine, or just a very talented birth facilitator, like, that could do what the doctor did. So I thought I was going to have a lovely home birth that would be perfect, and as it turned out, I needed to go to the hospital. The baby was fine. But I went to the hospital, and they got my placenta to come out without surgery. And it was a humbling experience for me to recognize that sometimes conventional medicine has a part to play, even in my life, and as natural as I try to have it be.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again at the Raw Food World.